booties for black girl nerds.
This is so cool, you guys. Like a brother team up in the virtual reality world is like that's amazing. So who was more excited to put on the headset first? I gotta know that.
We were both pretty stoked, to be honest. You know, what we were lucky about is we didn't have to fight over it too hard because we both had custom ones.
Yeah.
Because his head's a whole lot bigger than mine.
That's right.
So I had a little pea head one and he had a bigger one.
Yep.
So Chloe, I guess I'll start with you first. Like there's no, like cat mouse chasing you, not trying to be a superhero. What I think about your roles that are
mouse
so cool.
chasing Tom and Jerry.
Like, yeah, right. So what is so cool about your roles are like it's kind of like taking this like your imagination to another level and being completely confident in what you believe in. Is this a role like Flynne that kind of found you? Did you kind of seek it out?
It was honestly kind of both. I kind of saw a blurb about it being picked up by the Kilter team and Amazon, and I have been in conversation with my team about it, and I really wanted to meet on it. And Jonah and Lisa reached out, and they really wanted to talk to me about it, and I was like, hell yeah, of course. And so I kind of quickly read through the novel to go in and talk to them about it, and it was wild. I think in the first conversation we had, we just both them and I, we had so many things to say about the similarities between myself and Flynne, and how it kind of felt like this perfect kind of cosmic alignment to play this character. And yeah, I mean, thank you for mentioning my other projects, and I think that it is kind of funny. I do choose some high concept things sometimes that I feel like as an actor, whether I'm talking to completely inanimate objects and pretending that they're a cat and a mouse, or I'm putting on a headset and pretending that I'm a robot. I like to throw myself into situations where I walk off set and I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing?
But it's so cool. Yeah, I would say in the best way, it's so cool to see those roles. Jack, speaking of robot though, not necessarily Burton is a robot, but he has some cool features here. And I'm curious, like, hair, makeup time, what went through your mind when you read this in the script? Were you just like, oh my gosh, like this is completely like tech is completely taking over humans like right now?
Oh yeah, totally. I thought it was wild, but like also in a way where it feels like it's kind of right around the corner. This technology is not something that's so fantastical that we can't really imagine it being part of our world. I think a lot of the stuff that features in the show is stuff that is a proliferation of technology that we pretty much already have. So that was pretty amazing. But when you're referring to the haptics, these implants that Burton has throughout his body, the day that we did the shot on those, it was a pretty intense. I think it was like 3 or 4 hours to get into the back piece, and then another hour or two to get out of it. So that was long enough. But I didn't have to do it very much, so that was okay. But it was such a cool prosthetic. I loved having it on screen as a practical thing. I'm always a fan of practical effects more than CG if possible. So I thought it was really fun.
Yeah, it's so dope. Like the way that stuff look is so cool. Last question for you guys both. If you guys are both in like a sim mission together, like who's getting to the finish line? Like I think I know who might do it, but who's getting to the finish line first?
I'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Flynne, because Flynne
is
badass.
Yeah,
like she
so
comes
too.
out, like I don't even think she comes out with the knives and everything. But I'm just curious where you guys think is going.
It's funny because we were playing some Call of Duty together recently, and Chloe plays with her primary weapon as a shotgun, and so I tend to play with an assault rifle or a submachine gun as my primary weapon. So I kind of take point, and she just blows people away the closer they get to us.
It's a perfect duo.
I'm gonna say great tag team. Great tag team. Well, you guys did great in this project. It was so much fun to watch you guys, and I can't wait to see what people are gonna think about it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. Tania, I will start with you first. What's it like to have a character that just like walks over fear and then she'll laugh about it? Like, I think that's so cool. Just the bravery that she has.
There's no place. I think she's got to a point where there's no place or time for fear. The time for fear has long gone, and now it's just about getting the get done. Is that right? Getting the get done?
Yeah,
Something like that?
I'll take it.
I like it.
It's empowering, is what it is, because Tania is sometimes trepidatious about things, and So they ought to do that, and self-doubt and questioning and imposter syndrome and all that sort of stuff. But Cherise has none of that, so it's quite liberating in some respects. Yeah.
Yeah, that was so cool to see that. JJ, speaking of which of like liberating, I feel like Lev, hopefully I'm pronouncing the character name right, but I feel like he has Lev. I feel like he has a lot of the rules to the world that everybody doesn't know. He almost feels like the puppet master, like he has almost all the answers and he doesn't want to give everything away. So I'm curious for you, what was it like to play that character in the Notting Hill set? I thought was amazing. I was curious how you felt like on that set and like that background and kind of playing up that scenario.
The house, Lev's house.
Oh.
Lev's trying to play everyone. You know, that's what's fun, is he's spinning plates with everyone and he's playing people off each other. And he keeps his motives close to his own chest. So he's sending little people out on his little errands, and we don't know yet what the bigger game is beyond making money and accumulating power. But I think there's a lot more going on, a lot more personal. There's a personal aspect to Lev, which is going to be fun to see.
And how much did you guys play up the visual, the tech and everything is just stunning. How much did that kind of add to like each of you guys' roles? Was that kind of fun to play with? Was it sometimes where you kind of had to imagine where you were?
Do you know, I mean, yes, there was some imagination required and wanting to make sure you got that right, that thing. Is everyone we all doing the same thing?
Yeah, the finger stuff was crazy. That was crazy. Yeah.
Are we looking right? Everyone one doesn't. But actually the sets were incredible. I'd walk onto the set, especially the RI. Is that in episode 1 or 2? I can't remember. Well, anyway, you walk into this one, the RI Institute.
Yeah.
The hub of that, and just being completely never seen anything like it in my life. And they built these things. And because we were in such a small studio in London, they were building and knocking down all of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, these people worked tirelessly. They were, genius.
It was an amazing
genius.
balance of actual lo-fi building it, and then the special effects later. I never sat in front of a blue screen. You know, they built it, and yes, they augmented stuff in the background.
Yeah.
But credit to them. But I love it when we actually as actors get to sit on that structure that they built. That house was all built. The whole built. Lev's whole house was all built.
I didn't know that.
You know, and then there's a little bit of blue screen in the background where they can project the background of London. But no, that was all built. There's none of these, CGI rooms that they now have. You know, they've got these new rooms where it's like 280 degrees of a projected background. We had none of that. We were there.
Most of my stuff was on location, actually. Those wonderful, stunning locations. Sky Garden, Kew Gardens, that place in Brooklyn, just outside of Brooklyn. Yeah.
Well, you can tell you guys are fully immersed. Yeah.
It's like theatre. You're doing a screen, but it has the benefit of being literally on the stage, and that empowers it, gives you something.
Well, you can feel it with the performances, and you guys look amazing with the tech, the wardrobe, and I'm just excited. I can't wait to see how everything wraps up.
Thank you.
And Jonah, I gotta ask you first about this like insane world, because I'm a huge fan of person of interest, and I want to ask you, was it just the idea of like technology is getting way too out of control? Because we're doing interviews like this, we don't really talk that much anymore as far as tech. Was that one of the inspirations behind Peripheral?
Yeah, I think all of those things. I mean, we started developing before the pandemic, but even through the pandemic, you kind of felt like, oh, we're definitely barreling in this direction. The idea that we're now starting to create multiple levels of reality where we interact with each other virtually, we have whole virtual lives, and that we're almost as invested in those lives as we are in what you would consider our kind of primary or physical lives. And it's only going to get more complicated than that. So we were very taken with this question that William Gibson poses in his book, which is, at what point does that process end, right? Where do you run out of worlds, and how do we then connect all of them back together?
Yeah. And speaking to a connection, I kind of want to stay with you here for a little bit. The idea of these timelines is so crazy because that could get confusing anyway. How do you guys kind of map out and make sure, like, if you're jumping to, 2099 and you got to jump back, like, how do you keep all that stuff straight and in line so it's not confusing? Because you do a good job of it, because I knew where I was at every moment.
We brought in the amazingly talented Scott Smith, who's the showrunner, and we said, Scott, keep track of all this. No, but I think for me, I think that's kind of the delicious complexity of Gibson's premise is we're all familiar with time traveling movies. We're all familiar with these sorts of narratives. One, he figured out a way to make that actually make sense for me for the first time. Because one of the problems with time travel is, well, and if anything can happen, then does anything matter? And he found a way to make that, to connect that to the question of multiple worlds and the consequences of changing one world being that you create another world, which is a fascinating idea. For me, suggests a kind of path through these questions where you're still connected to the characters that you care about. We come to know Garry's character and Chloe's character and Jack's character and understand and care about them and understand that they're standing in this very precarious kind of place with regards to all of the other worlds around them. So it's a really fun question to play with.
Garry, I feel like Wilf has a lot of fun because he gets to time jump the most. And I'm curious, like, what is his like motivation? Like, what do you feel he cares about the most?
I think that changes. I think at the start of the series, he just has these questions that he needs to get answers for. And then I think halfway through the story, I think he starts to care about Flynne and just her being and her safety, and because it does get, it goes wild, it gets crazy. And yeah, I think that's pretty much what he cares about. He cares about other things, but I don't give anything away.
I know. I was gonna say I like how you're dancing around it but you guys did just a wonderful job, and it's just like I said, just dumping through this timeline. I can't wait to see how it all ends, and I really appreciate the time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk to the masterminds of this VR world. This is cool.
I love that shirt.
Thank you. Vincenzo, I gotta ask you, like, one of the coolest things is when Lynn sits down in a chair and she counts backwards. It really falls into the world. And I'm wondering how as a director, like, how was that shooting that moment? Was it challenging to kind of get those scenes? Because you're bouncing back and forth in between like a different reality.
Thank you. Oh, well, we put a lot of thought into those transitions because this is a show of transitions, going from one world to the next. And actually the answer was, I think, to be very simple. Not to have anything flashy or kind of like an Avatar sort of going through a Stargate type thing, but you're just there instantaneously. And in that way, it's actually more shocking and I think more arresting than like a fancy visual effects sequence. I think in general, the approach to the show visually was a sort of stripping away. There's a tendency in science fiction and particularly fantasy to build things and to kind of overbuild, over-design. And we were in these two amazing locations. One, of course, was London, England, but the other was Marshall, North Carolina. And they were both seductive, beautiful places that were totally different from each other and yet had these weird sort of parallels. So, so sorry, answering your question, I think a lot of it was just like being very simple and straightforward, and then to let the beautiful writing and leadership of Jonathan Nolan and Lisa and Scott Smith, our creator, showrunner, tell the story with great words.
Well, Chloe is just so fun too. The way you directed her is like, she's just counting, but that's how you know she's brilliant, because she's just counting and you can't take your eyes off her. And at one point she does this little giggle like, this isn't working, this is stupid. And I just had anesthesia and I remember being like, this isn't working. And then the next thing I remember, I'm awake and I'm like, oh, I get the Flynne Fisher thing, except I didn't wake up on a cool motorcycle in a dude's body, so,
Right. I'm like, do I need to go get me a VR set right now? I'm like, I don't know if it's going to be as cool, but I'm like, I want to know what this world is about because I've never played before. But Lisa, kind of staying with you here for a minute, though, I'm curious, like, what character for you was like just so surprising? You were like, oh, I can't wait to bring this to the screen for people just to see like the twists and turns.
I love all of the characters.
Right.
I love Connor a lot, Eli's character. I think the idea of his backstory and his pains, but also his stoicism is really just cool to watch, that transformation. But more than that, I just love the camaraderie of that community. I think I've been missing community. Like during COVID, I was lonely. I think we were all kind of lonely, and watching everybody through a screen is a little hard. And so to see a bunch of people hanging out and having each other's backs, it was just heartening. It's like, oh yeah, this is how you get through hard times, right? This is how you get through times of uncertainty. You kind of lean on your people.
I got to ask you both as we kind of wrap here, quantum tunneling. By the way, the concepts in this show are so amazing. How do you survive that? Like, give us some tips as viewers Because I love how you guys are pulling us into this world with its own rules.
So the idea is that, you know, in time travel, right? Like matter is probably really difficult to convey through time, but data itself, information, right? If you did have to transfer something through time, data might actually be one of the easiest things to transport. And so it's not about, you know, beaming someone up in somewhere else, right? The physical form that you take would have to be created in that reality. But the thoughts and communications, that those might actually be the first step to real time travel. And so I think William Gibson, always so grounded in science and, you know, real world possibilities, kind of picked up on that. And that's where the core conceit of the sci-fi aspect of this comes from.
Yeah, it's the, like, the world is so cool. Like you said, just stripping it away, but it's still sci-fi. It's just amazing. And I can't wait to see where the journey ends. And I really appreciate the time.
No, thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
lovely chatting with you.
Thanks so much, guys.
Better shake your booties for black girl nerves. Better shake your booties for black girl nerves.